Before we dive into this untold Hollywood story, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Stories like this go far beyond fame and laughter, revealing the emotional cost hidden behind legendary success. For decades, Bob Hope stood frozen in photographs and movie posters beside another man the world believed was his closest companion. Their smiles promised warmth, friendship, and effortless harmony. To audiences, Bob Hope and Bing Crosby were not just co-stars. They were proof that success could be shared without rivalry, that laughter could bind two men together across generations. Yet behind the polished publicity images and carefully crafted jokes, Bob Hope carried a disappointment so quiet that few ever noticed it forming. This was not the kind of pain that explodes into scandal or public feuds. It grew slowly, invisibly, shaped by silence rather than arguments. The moment that finally shattered what little bond Hope believed existed did not happen under bright studio lights or during a dramatic confrontation. It happened quietly, through absence, indifference, and a realization that arrived far too late. This story is not about betrayal through cruelty. It is about the deeper wound caused when chemistry is mistaken for connection and success disguises emotional distance. Long before Bob Hope and Bing Crosby became Hollywood institutions, they were simply two performers surviving the unpredictable grind of vaudeville. Their worlds collided through a mutual friend who sensed that their contrasting energies might spark something unique on stage. There was no grand vision, no promise of stardom, and certainly no expectation of legacy. The idea was informal and almost careless. Short crossover comedy bits where two performers met briefly, exchanged jokes, and moved on. Yet the moment they shared a stage, something undeniable happened. The timing clicked. The banter flowed with surprising ease. Audiences responded with louder laughter than expected, as if instinctively recognizing something rare. Both men felt it, even if neither fully understood it yet. Still, that spark did not become friendship. At that point in their lives, they were already moving in different directions. Bing Crosby had become a national voice through radio and recordings, his smooth delivery creating an intimate connection with millions of listeners. Bob Hope, meanwhile, was still climbing, hosting shows, refining his persona, and struggling to turn talent into lasting recognition. The promise between them existed, but it was never nurtured, and that neglect would matter more than either man realized. Instead of growing closer, Hope and Crosby drifted apart for 5 crucial years. Crosby returned to Hollywood, where success arrived with remarkable ease. His career expanded naturally, supported by a system eager to elevate him. Bob Hope remained in New York, grinding relentlessly, refining his comedic voice, and watching from a distance as Crosby's star continued to rise. That separation created an imbalance neither man openly acknowledged, but both quietly carried. When they finally reunited years later on the Paramount lot, the dynamic had already been set. Crosby arrived as an established force, comfortable in his authority and reputation. Hope arrived hungry, ambitious, and acutely aware of the gap between them. Their chemistry remained intact, perhaps even sharper than before, but it now rested on unequal ground. Studio executives noticed immediately. What audiences had once loved on stage could be transformed into something larger, more profitable. Scripts were developed not around closeness, but contrast. That decision would define everything that followed. On screen, they would appear inseparable. Off-screen, the emotional distance would only grow, hidden beneath success. The birth of the Road pictures cemented Bob Hope and Bing Crosby as an iconic duo. On screen, their dynamic felt effortless and authentic. Crosby played the relaxed charmer, drifting through danger with confidence and ease. Hope played the anxious talker, using humor as a shield against fear. Together, they felt complete, as if each man filled the other's missing space. Audiences believed they were witnessing genuine friendship. Behind the scenes, however, something else was forming. Bob Hope saw the partnership as validation. To him, standing beside Bing Crosby meant acceptance, proof that he belonged among the elite of American entertainment. Crosby saw the partnership differently. For him, it was business, an arrangement that worked efficiently without requiring emotional investment. That difference quietly shaped their relationship. Hope leaned in. Crosby held back. Neither spoke about it. Hollywood rewarded results, not honesty. As long as the films succeeded, There was no reason to question what lay beneath the laughter. Yet every joke, every shared scene, and every burst of applause reinforced an illusion that only one of them truly believed in. The success of Road to Singapore changed Bob Hope's life overnight. What began as a calculated studio experiment became one of the most profitable pairings Hollywood had ever seen. Audiences didn't just enjoy the film, they embraced the dynamic as something special, almost personal. Hope's nervous bravado collided perfectly with Crosby's calm confidence, creating laughter that felt spontaneous and unscripted. To the public, it looked like the birth of an unbreakable friendship. Behind the scenes, the success deepened an imbalance that had never been addressed. Crosby already possessed wealth, fame, and cultural authority long before the film. The Road pictures expanded his empire but did not define it. For Hope, these films were everything. They were confirmation that he had arrived, that he could command the same audience and respect. Financial disparities only intensified this divide. Crosby earned significantly more in the early years, reflecting his established status. Hope accepted it publicly, but privately it fueled a quiet determination to prove himself. That determination would soon turn into competition, and competition would slowly replace connection. As the Road films continued, success quietly transformed into competition. It was never loud or openly hostile, but it lived in the small moments that only those on set could feel. Bob Hope worked obsessively, sharpening his timing, refining his delivery, and surrounding himself with teams of writers who could give him sharper, faster, and more memorable lines. Every laugh mattered to him. Every pause was calculated. Bing Crosby, by contrast, appeared untouched by the same urgency. He arrived relaxed, confident that his presence alone carried weight. This difference unsettled Hope. He needed feedback, engagement, and energy from the people around him. Crosby treated the set like a job site. Between takes, he often sat alone, reading racing forms or withdrawing into silence. To him, it was efficiency. To Hope, it felt like rejection. The gap widened quietly. Audiences saw two men feeding off each other's rhythm, but behind the camera, one man was reaching outward while the other remained comfortably distant. The laughter covered everything, masking a growing emotional imbalance that no script could fix. The illusion of closeness became stronger with each film. Improvisation blurred the line between character and reality, convincing fans that the affection was genuine. Studio publicity eagerly reinforced that myth, promoting Hope and Crosby as inseparable partners whose friendship was as real as their success. Bob Hope wanted to believe it himself. He noticed, however, the unanswered invitations, the absence of shared dinners, and the lack of casual time together outside work. Their wives never became close. Their homes remained separate worlds. Crosby did not seek Hope's company once the cameras stopped rolling. For Hope, who measured relationships through presence and participation, this absence was painful. He said little, choosing professionalism over confrontation. Crosby, meanwhile, felt no need to explain himself. He respected Hope's talent and reliability, but emotional closeness was not something he offered easily. As the 1940s progressed, their partnership became unshakably successful, yet emotionally hollow. They were creating history together while living entirely separate lives, connected only by contracts, schedules, and audience expectation. Nothing exposed this divide more painfully than the night Bob Hope was honored by the Friars Club. The event was meant to celebrate belonging, achievement, and affection. Nearly every major figure in entertainment attended. A seat was reserved prominently for Bing Crosby, not merely as a guest, but as a board member of the club. Yet Crosby never arrived. His absence was unmistakable. For Hope, it was deeply humiliating. He never spoke publicly about it, but those close to him understood the weight of that silence. The message was clear. Crosby did not feel obligated to show up, not even for the man most associated with his cinematic legacy. When reporters later asked Crosby why he skipped the event, his response was delivered casually, almost dismissively. "I wasn't hungry." It was framed as a joke, but it landed like a verdict. To Hope, who believed friendship revealed itself through effort, that single line confirmed a fear he had carried for years. He mattered to Crosby only when the partnership was profitable. Outside of that, he was optional. The imbalance extended into how each man viewed success itself. Bob Hope needed acknowledgement. He surrounded himself with visible symbols of achievement, reminders that his struggle had been worth it. In his office, he proudly displayed a vial of oil from a Texas well he and Crosby had invested in, a tangible symbol of how far he had come. Bing Crosby viewed wealth differently. Investments were practical tools, not emotional milestones. He never felt the need to celebrate them or display proof of success. This difference turned every shared achievement into another quiet comparison Hope could never win. On set, the rivalry sharpened further. Each man employed separate writing teams, crafting jokes designed to tilt the laughter in his favor. The competition remained polite, even playful, but it was constant. Crosby seemed unaffected by it. Hope felt every inch of it. What hurt most was not cruelty or betrayal, but indifference. Crosby did not need Hope's approval. Hope needed Crosby's recognition, and the absence of it slowly became unbearable. Despite everything, Bob Hope never walked away. He admired Crosby's ease, his natural talent, and his ability to step away from Hollywood without consequence. At the same time, he resented that detachment. Crosby never chased approval. Hope chased it constantly, and nowhere more intensely than in this partnership. The road films had made Hope a star, but they had also bound him emotionally to a man who would never meet him halfway. They were not enemies. They respected each other's abilities deeply. But respect was not what Hope wanted. He wanted warmth, loyalty, and acknowledgement. What he received instead was distance wrapped in success. Over time, that frustration hardened into something heavier. Hope began to realize that the betrayal was not a single moment, but a pattern he had accepted for far too long, believing that patience might someday turn chemistry into genuine connection. By the time the Road series had become an institution, Bob Hope and Bing Crosby were no longer just entertainers. They were living brands, cultural symbols whose names alone guaranteed success. Their combined earnings from films, radio, live appearances, and investments reached staggering levels. Hope would later admit that at certain points, the money came in faster than they could reasonably invest it. To studio executives and the public, this financial triumph proved the partnership was flawless. But to Hope, it only magnified what was missing. On paper, their lives looked intertwined. They shared a love of golf, spending hours on courses whenever schedules allowed. They invested together in oil ventures and even held ownership stakes in a major baseball team. Yet even in these shared interests, the emotional divide remained untouched. Crosby treated business as a necessity, something to be handled efficiently and then forgotten. Hope treated success as affirmation, as visible proof that his long struggle for acceptance had finally been justified. Each time Crosby shrugged at milestones Hope cherished, the wound quietly reopened. Their personalities clashed in ways that words never addressed. Bob Hope was never truly off stage. Even in private settings, he performed, telling jokes, seeking laughter, feeding off reactions. Humor was not just his profession, it was his survival mechanism. It was how he measured connection and belonging. Bing Crosby found that exhausting. With the people he trusted most, Crosby valued silence. He could gamble, drink, or disappear for long stretches without explanation. With Hope, he felt trapped in a perpetual performance, a space where stillness was not allowed. The man audiences adored was not the man Crosby wanted beside him once the cameras stopped rolling. Hope interpreted Crosby's withdrawal as arrogance or coldness. Crosby viewed Hope's constant need for validation as insecurity. Neither confronted the truth directly. Hollywood discouraged emotional honesty, rewarding results instead. As long as the films succeeded and the money flowed, there was no incentive to repair emotional fractures. So they smiled, traded barbs on cue, and allowed the myth of friendship to grow larger than the truth. By the late 1970s, time had done what rivalry never could. The Road pictures were long finished. Hollywood itself had changed, and both men were living on legacies that no longer required proof. They were no longer competitors chasing laughs or box office numbers. They were monuments. Yet for Bob Hope, the emotional ledger with Bing Crosby remained unsettled. There had been no confrontation, no moment of honesty, no acknowledgement of the imbalance that had defined their relationship for decades. That silence lingered until the night it could no longer be ignored. On October 14th, while staying at the Waldorf Astoria in New York, Hope received the call that Bing Crosby had suffered a fatal heart attack while playing golf in Spain. The news struck him with unexpected force. Hope later admitted it triggered the worst headache of his life. He immediately canceled his scheduled appearance and flew home. For the first time, the distance between them was no longer emotional. It was final. Before leaving, Bob Hope asked for one thing. He wanted a statement released to the press. What followed was not defensive, strategic, or self-promotional. It was restrained, measured, and devastatingly sincere. He spoke of a man admired across the world, of a voice that crossed borders, of Christmases made brighter, of a question humanity had answered together through music and warmth. The tribute spread quickly across newspapers in America and Europe. To the public, it sounded like pure grief. To those who knew Hope well, it sounded like closure. Beneath the carefully chosen words lived a more complicated truth. Hope was mourning not just a man, but a relationship that had never fully existed. They had been born weeks apart, risen together, reshaped comedy together, and yet rarely shared anything private. Crosby had never betrayed Hope with cruelty. He betrayed him with indifference, with absence, with a refusal to become the friend Hope had always hoped for. After Crosby's death, the myth of their friendship solidified permanently. Cartoons depicted them reunited in heaven, trading jokes once more. Fans remembered only laughter, harmony, and shared success. Bob Hope never corrected the story. Perhaps he understood that legends require simplicity, even when real life does not. Privately, however, the loss forced him to accept what he had resisted for decades. The partnership had given him fame, wealth, and history. It had not given him the bond he wanted. What ended that relationship was not anger, scandal, or betrayal in the traditional sense. It was the realization that it had never truly been what Hope believed it was. That realization, arriving only after death, became the quietest and most painful truth of all. And it forces us to ask a difficult question about Hollywood's greatest duos. How many legendary partnerships were built on chemistry alone, while the people inside them quietly carried needs that were never met?